Good morning from Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester. Panhandle Outdoors, your source for fishing, hunting, and information for folks who enjoy the great outdoors. Now sit back, relax. It's Panhandle Outdoors.
All right, good morning, folks. Welcome to Panhandle Outdoors. I'm Winston Chester. I'm glad you're here this morning. Got a great show lined up. But first, our weather brought to us by Haney Technical Center at the corner of Baldwin and 77. It's going to be sort of a warm day, high of 79, but the low is only going to be like 68 degrees. And got that front coming in. We've got some cold weather coming this weekend, so we'll talk more about it tomorrow, have more of a eye as what's going on. But the water temperature now has dropped down to 71. That's the lowest it's been all since early spring, 71 degrees here. So be aware of how that's really pushing things on out of here. I had a picture sent in the other day, 2 days ago, of a manatee, and that's they're going to be getting on out of here. I shouldn't be any more manatees left after this weekend. So be aware of everything going on around the water. Speaking of the river readings, fresh water, we're looking at Apalachicola at Bluntstown. It has been nice and level. I've heard some good reports. It's at 1.4 this morning, and on Friday and Saturday, going out Saturday morning, you're going to be fishing around a 1-foot river. All right? The Choctawhatchee at Caryville is going to be very similar. It's at 2.8 this morning, and not much movement at all in the Choctawhatchee. So both big rivers will have the just a real steady flow coming up this weekend. Our tide chart brought to us by Kent Forest Lawn Funeral Home and Cemetery, and their motto is when carrying counts. So they're right here at 23rd Street. Take a look at it on your screen there. November the 4th, and we're looking at, this is November the 5th, isn't it? We're on November the 5th already. I lost today, but we're back into some good tides now. Thursday, Friday, and Saturday looks really strong also, but the tide, we have a low tide at 4:18 and a high at 7:30. All right, some good strong tides. All right, we'll go ahead and our marine forecast be south-southeast at about 5 to 10. All right, let's take our break and come back with our guest. All right, welcome back. Sitting here with us this morning, Captain Rick and Captain Ryan. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, how are you?
Good to see you now.
Yep, good to see you too.
Glad to have you back. We're talking off the air. These are our boat experts because they have so many experiences all around boats, big ones and little ones.
Well, between the two of us, we got 75 years.
75 years, okay. So anytime you have boating questions, in which I have some written down here, you always send them to me. Every time they come on once a month, and we'll get them squared away. But what have you guys been up to lately?
Just looking at pointy-ended things that float.
Okay.
Looking at boats.
Have y'all been pretty busy?
Yeah, we've had a good year so far, and looks like it's picking up. So right now we expect it to slow down a little bit because it's coming up on Christmas.
Yeah.
It starts slowing down in November a little bit, and then December. Every once in a while, December, for some unknown reason, we'll get real busy. But it's, it depends on how good a season they had, and they got a little extra money. They'll put it in their boats in December because things are slow.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times now, this time of year, people especially, start talking about winterizing our boats and getting things ready. Ryan, I know you were in the Coast Guard, so y'all didn't really have to winterize your boats, did you?
Yeah, they kept those Coast Guard vessels running 24/7.
24/7, so y'all don't have to worry about much. And plus, you're in the South and all, it's not quite as strong. But what are just some pointers for the average Joe out there with say anywhere from 17 to 28-foot boat? What are some things?
Well, boats that are trailable, when you haul them out and set them up, a lot of people forget that if you got water inside that boat somewhere and it freezes, it's going to expand, and you can do damage, or you can have something break, and then you won't know it till you go to use the boat in the spring, because a lot of people, the boat sits there all winter. Well, don't leave any water in it. Don't leave any water in the engine. If a lot of people leave the engine tilted up, and there's water can stay in there. If you put that engine down where it normally is, it'll drain out.
Also, fuel stabilizer for your tanks, for your fuel tanks.
Stabilizer,
especially if you have ethanol in it.
Oh yes. In fact, don't use ethanol if you can avoid it. Use regular gas. There's places, all the marinas use regular gas.
It's been interesting watching the development of that over the years, because when it first came out, everybody was still using, and now most people now won't use any ethanol.
Well, Kenny Weinbreck and myself, Jim Woods, and Dick Frenzel were the 4 surveyors that found this problem with ethanol. Mm-hmm. And it started, Kenny Weinbreck ran into it first up in New York, state of New York, and he was going nuts, and he called us to come up, and we all got to looking and started experimenting with it a little bit and figured out what was going on. And what it does, if you've got a fiberglass tank especially, it breaks down the MEK, and you wind up with what looks like a tar. And it just absolutely ruins an engine. The other thing that happens is your fuel lines. That stuff eats in because it's a lot of alcohol, so it lead up rubber or neoprene and certain types of rubber. It just destroys the inside.
And I really don't think the government, anybody did any kind of research on that as it was coming out, because it just hit America, all American boaters. It just hit broadside with that.
Yep.
And all the guys I talked to, BJ's Marine and all them, they were just shaking their head. There were just people waiting in line trying to get their boats fixed.
Yep.
And they found out that's what it was.
Yep. And once we found out, then they don't run, if you got a fiberglass tank or a polypropylene tank, you don't run ethanol at all, because it will eventually get to that engine through that. It'll break the material down.
Phase separation.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what
So the bottom line is, if you use stabilizer in the gasoline, if you got diesel, you want to put a bile guard in there to keep, the airspace. There is a little airspace in between the water that gets from condensation in a diesel tank and the diesel, and as it moves up and down the tank, in that airspace lives that fungus, and it'll attach to the side of the tank, and after a while you get long strings of green algae. And that gets in and it blows the tip off the injector, and all of a sudden one day you're running and you got all this white smoke, and what it is you're putting raw fuel that's steaming. It turns to steam in there, and that's not good on a diesel engine. So if you put a bile guard, you keep that from developing.
Okay, talking about fuel now, I had one of the viewers ask just the other day, we were talking about they were bringing their boat back to the landing, and all of a sudden their steering cable went out. And this time of year, what about steering cables on these small boats? What can you do to prevent that kind of stuff?
Well, they make some different types of grease, and what you want to do is, if it's an outboard, you got that rod back there that runs in and out. You want to run that rod out, turn it where it's sticking out as far, and then take that grease and put it on there to keep it greased, so that it doesn't, because inside, if it's closed up and it congeals, you got a problem. But out in the open, it won't. So you want to make sure that you turn it to where that's exposed.
Well, is this a good time of year to do that, or should you wait till springtime and do it?
I would do it now and then do it again in springtime, because you want to keep that from getting rusty, because it's open to the atmosphere, and that grease will keep that off.
Especially since you've been running the boat this summer, all that salt water, especially in salt water, it'll corrode out.
Good point. All right, let's take our break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. Sitting here, getting set up for the next segment was what I'm trying to say, and all kinds of things going on, but trying to get some pictures set up. But we're talking about some people. We're talking about leaks in boats and all. You shouldn't have water in your boat this day and age.
No.
Fiberglass
Fiberglass boat. If you've got a leak, if you've got water, you've got a minor problem, or it could be a major, depending on how much water you're taking in over a period of time. But if you've got water in your boat, there's a reason. Now, if it's a little bit and you got no air conditioning, it could be from the boat being closed up. You got to think of a fiberglass boat kind of like a thermos jug, and you close it up. During the day, it gets hot in there, and then in the afternoon, when the temperature starts changing, you get condensate. That'll cause some water in the bilge, because it's got to go to the bilge. It's going to go down.
Also, if you have like through-hole fittings for your bait wells or such as that, sometimes those hoses around those connections, they'll work their way loose, especially if they're out offshore, in waves and heavy seas. Those always want to check your connections to make sure those through-hole fittings are nice and snug.
Yeah. That's a good point there too. And of course, you always go back to the bilge pump. You want to make sure that bilge pump is working. So. Yeah,
because it really is not damage control. It is basically to get rid of seepage and condensate that we've been talking about here.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, when you look at your bilge pump, if it says it's a 1,500 gallons per hour, no, it's not. Figure about half that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because you got to remember, when they check these pumps, they check them horizontally that way. They just pump it straight. Well, in a boat, it's got to go up and out to be above the water line, and that head pressure will drop it nearly half. So if you got a 1,500 rule, that's 1,500 gallons per hour. You really got a 750 gallon an hour pump. Well, a 1-inch hole, 1 foot below the water line, the pressure is enough to put 768 gallons an hour in that boat.
Okay.
So you're losing 18 gallons an hour
Because of that,
with one pump.
That's interesting. Let's look at a couple of pictures real quick here between this time right here. This is an interesting picture talking about some nice fish. This is over at the Chattahoochee Dam, where Lake Seminole and the Ocklawackney,
Is that a striped bass?
River. Mm-hmm. That's a striper, okay?
Yeah.
That's William Jones. William's been on here before. That's a nice fish right there. Good job, William. Also, he caught a hybrid. He caught a 13-pound hybrid. So fishing up at that dam is really good this time of year. You got to catch it right though. You got to catch those gates when they just got them shut off. Okay. Here's a nice king. The kingfish have been doing good. One of the former students in it. Yeah. Waddell got a nice one here. And let's see. I got let me see if I go back. I got one more. So I got some flounder. Let me show these flounder here, Jeff. Got one more of this. Talking about flounder. This midweek flounder report. They were good. This comes off the tight line charters with Ryan Huggins and Justin Kelly there. So that's some good fish. For this time of year now, it's right before this front all comes. If you can fish right before a front comes in, you're going to be in good shape.
Yep.
If you're right there in the middle of the front and it's storming and all, it's going to be tough. And right after the front, it's going to be tough. And but if you time it, like last week, I had a chance to catch some pompano, but if I didn't have time to catch many. But if I had time, I could have caught a bunch of them. But right before that front came in,
yep.
And that's a good time to go. Speaking of, and I was at the seafood festival this past week, and a lot of times people come in and look at. We have these pictures in the book hanging on the tent and all, and people come in just fascinated with how those old boats were built, and we tell a lot of boat stories and all.
Yep.
And I know we've talked about here on the show before. The old wooden boats, so we don't have them anymore, but the structure of those boats were strong with it.
Oh, yeah. Well, you got to stop and think. For thousands of years, that's the only way you had a boat, was a wood boat. The biggest problem with wood boats is not that they're bad. It's finding people that still have the art of picking the wood, of putting the wood together. A good shipwright's hard to find. We've got probably 3 or 4 in town here. And they're good, but if you don't do it right, you can create a problem in a wood boat that could be catastrophic. And some of these jacklegs that try it, they don't understand about wood and how to pick it. You got some woods that they're not compatible, and that'll create a problem. But
these early boats they built around here, they were oak and cedar.
Yeah, they usually used either what they call juniper or cypress, or in some boats out west were western cedar on white oak frames. The oak frames were strong enough, and the cedar it would expand enough to help keep the water out. And then they use oakum in the seams.
I know your dad had a lot of experience with that.
Oh yeah. Oh, by the time I was 14, I knew how to caulk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and oakum was a caulking material they used down here in St. Andrew. And I really was not that familiar with it until I started doing the research on the book, and I could learn it right away. That was a really big deal.
Yes, it was.
Was to have that.
Yes, it was.
That oakum and all.
One of the things they run into with wood boats now, and I had a couple happen to the west over here. People realize that stainless steel is good to use in salt water. But if your boat was built way back, like when Harker's Island was building a lot of wood boats up in North Carolina, they're using Mon-El or they're using silicon bronze fasteners. Well, you don't want to go back with stainless steel because now you got 2 different metals and you got salt water. You made a battery and it'll create a situation called electrolysis in the wood. And it'll also eat the fittings up because they're working on each other. If you had silicon bronze or Mon-El, if you refasten that boat, refasten it with the same thing, because if you don't, you're creating a problem that will haunt you in a few years. Had one boat was completely condemned because of that, and it was simply because they got somebody that didn't know enough about the fact that dissimilar metals will affect wood. And so,
Now, when you can run across a boat like that, Rick and Ryan, the insurance companies, do they usually cover something like that? Or how does that go? And
fortunately, they do insure stupidity.
Okay. So
Proper maintenance is always the key, though, to help you with that flame.
Yeah.
And we talked about that before. You keep a record of all your maintenance. Just
Right.
Keep a record of
And,
keep a record.
and you know, under the circumstances, what happens if they can find them sometime in that situation is the insurance company would pay the claim. And then subrogate against who did the maintenance because did the repairs because he didn't know what he was doing.
And they should have known better.
And they should have known better because he's representing himself as a shipwright.
Okay, let's take a final break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the final segment. Let's take a look at our fishing game forecast today, brought to us by Mark Coward of Edgewater Beach Realty. Mark's number is 832-6000. If you can get off during lunch, now we talked about this. This lunchtime's been really good this past 2 or 3 weeks. About 10:25 to 12:25, right there in the middle of the day. And tonight, if you're going floundering, 10:52 to 12:52. But now the moon's working on up there, working toward a full moon pretty soon. So it's going to be later you wait to go, the more light you're going to have. Usually more spooky the flounder are. So be aware of that. You want to go right there as it gets darker. It's getting dark early now.
New moon's the best time.
Fall back. Right?
That's exactly right. We were talking about that. Now we were talking about. I know you like to fish and you like to shoot. Things y'all enjoy doing. And tell us about fishing. Have you been able to have time to do much?
Unfortunately, we've been working quite a bit, so I hadn't had a whole lot of time out on the water.
I told Ryan, I said, don't worry about it, because most of y'all tell me the same thing, and I'm the same way. We get to work more than we get to fish.
Unfortunately.
That don't sound fair, does it?
That's the case, especially for October. It always seems like every year it's like that for me.
Is that a real busy month?
Yeah, it picks up.
Yeah. Well, you were getting ready to go to the shooting range. Check it out.
Yeah, I was going to go this last weekend and had a bunch of reports to get out, and so I begged off. But I'm going to get with Tom and them out of Money Miser, and hopefully this Sunday we'll go out there and see how that new range looks like. I'll try to take some pictures.
Okay.
I hear it's a very, very, very nice facility.
Yeah, and it's going to get
well
better.
run.
And they're going to add to it as we go along.
Yeah, I understand they got a 100 yards, a 300 yards rifle range, and they're going to have, I think he said, a 15 and a 25 meter pistol range.
Yeah.
And that's what I want to do more of.
Now, what will you be shooting this weekend?
I've got a new 5.7 FN pistol I haven't shot it, and of course I like shooting the 357. I got a Security 6 that really is a tack driving pistol, and then I like it because I can really hit with it. And then I've got a new 308 Savage with a silencer, and I wanted to see how that shot and make sure it's zeroed. And then I acquired a really beautiful Mauser built on a custom stock with in 270 Winchester, and I want to see how it shoots.
You going to try all of those out?
Yep, try to.
Well, how many rounds do you think you're going to shoot? I mean,
probably a dozen 308 and 270, and probably, I don't know, a box of 5.7 and 357. Well, I'll probably use 38 special, but yeah. The first time I shot it, we went to Jay's, and I shot on the inside range and was shooting everything into black with that 357, so I was real pleased with that pistol. It surprised me. I bought it not long ago and thought, well, I'll try it out.
Yeah.
But it's wound up to be one of my favorites because it really does shoot right where it's supposed to.
Well, that's good. Talking about these silencers, that's becoming pretty popular now.
Yeah, well, the reason I got it is I want to shoot some hogs because we got three things that are really so prolific right now. They're a problem, and that's coyotes, armadillos, and hogs.
Mm-hmm.
And the feral hogs, you just shoot to your heart's content because you're helping things if you'll kill about half of them because they're getting out of hand. And coyotes pretty much the same way, and they go after other pets and things of that nature. And then the armadillo is just, I had to go to Montgomery here not long back, and I counted. There was 148 roadkill armadillos between here and Montgomery.
148?
148. We were counting them as we were going up. I said, man, there's a lot of armadillos out here.
They just counts the ones killed, don't it?
Yeah.
What about all the ones out in the woods and fields?
Yeah, I was talking to Cornell last night, Cornell Brock. He's got one of these new PMR 30s that carries 30 rounds of 22 Magnum. He said, that's good for shooting armadillos. He said, but I can't hit with it. I said, well, we'll work on that. I know what he was doing. And people forget a pistol shoots a little bit high and close, and so you got to aim below what you're shooting at.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, Rick. You're talking about you aiming and all the shooting, and I know you do a lot of shooting, more than the average guy. Do you when you're out there shooting, do you make adjustments like that, or you know that's you know that just from experience?
That's what I'm doing is keeping my experience level. I know what I'm shooting points and where it hits. That's part of practicing that and learning breath control and making sure you're doing all the things right, such as keeping daylight in the trigger finger and so on.
And we're talking about our archery hunters. Talking about these guys, these bows. You just can't go out open a day and pull it back and all. But you've got to practice. You got to practice shooting archery. You got to practice shooting your gun.
Right.
And
it's just like handling a boat. Just about every survey I go on, I like to handle a boat simply because two things. One, I then have a real feel for the boat. But two, it keeps me to where, if you go to water cooler and come back, you got to be retrained. And so I make a lot of trips to water cooler.
And on the other hand, Ryan, you don't have to practice fishing much because we do that all the time.
That's right. You gotta cast though. You gotta cast towards.
But you gotta learn how to hold your mouth
toward the fish.
Well, you stop and think about it. We joke about it, but because you're out there all the time, you really need it. You don't need to practice because you just go in there, jump in the boat, and go do it.
Absolutely. And did you say that you had a Pompano trip not too long ago?
Yeah, like I say, last week we were getting ready to go set up and everything. So I had a little window of time while Gail was getting everything ready. I want to get she went to all the work. She was getting her stuff ready. I already had a truck loaded up. And she was getting her stuff ready. I said, I'm gonna run down to the beach and for 30 minutes. I said, I'll be back in 30 minutes. And literally, I was going 30 minutes. And
that means she's fished for about 10 minutes.
Because all I took was one bucket and a rod and reel. And I had those little fish. I didn't try to catch any bait. I had a little fish strip and all. So it worked out good.
Did you catch any?
I caught that one night. So I need to show y'all. I did a selfie on it. I don't think I've showed y'all yet, but I'll show y'all on it. We're about to run out of time, guys. Thank y'all.
Yep.
Time flies.
Yep.
All right. See y'all next month. Thank y'all for watching Panhandle Outdoors. I want to thank God for these beautiful sunsets and these hungry fish, and thank you for watching. And make sure you do something good for someone else today. God bless.
Thanks for joining us for Panhandle Outdoors with Winston Chester. Panhandle Outdoors features hunting, fishing, and other activities and information to help you enjoy the great outdoors. Join us next time for Panhandle Outdoors.